There'll be some opportunity this week as we're coming to the end of the liturgical calendar to reflect on the book of Maccabees, 1st and 2nd this week, so it's exciting. It's one of my favorite books, and this is where one of my times my heart breaks with some of our Protestant brothers and sisters who don't get exposed to these two books because they're so poignant and powerful, especially, it's timely and it gives us an insight and a way and encouragement and courage in how we as people of faith are called to remain faithful in an ever-increasing pluralistic world. That's the challenge they were put, as we hear right there. It's like, they're encouraged to start cozying up in the sense of pluralism. There's a natural tension that occurs, but then it's also a little bit more like erode, in the process, to the point, and then it's like, you know what? Because someone could say, like, you could believe what you want privately, but if you just do this publicly, we should be all set. Just eat a little pork. What's the harm? Violate the dietary laws. Sometimes on the front it sounds like, what's the harm that could do? But in their minds, like these are what slowly begins to erode one's ability to be faithful. It's just like in a relationship. What's the harm if you just look lustfully at somebody? It's like you're not doing anything harmful. You're not cheating, right? And then slowly over time, what enters into the brain, what erodes into the heart, and then eventually you find yourself in a spot. What did I just do? And so, too, here you have an example of we will remain faithful even if it costs us our life. And I can only imagine that the early church in the first century looked to the Maccabees, the Maccabean, as a source of strength in the face of Christian persecution post-resurrection. Be faithful. God is faithful. Be faithful. And so hopefully we gain strength as we're reflecting on these books this week. And today we also get a beautiful example of a beautiful saint. Saint Elizabeth of Hungary, a woman who lived only 24 years, but made an enormous impact on the world and in the life of the church. And, this is one of those beautiful saints. If when we have a Halloween, the young girls can dress. Look, I'm dressed up as a princess. She was a princess, right? A royalty, born into royalty, raised in comfort, surrounded by all the privileges of her time. But yet, the moment you start to learn about her, you realize that she never let any of that get in the way of her desire to follow Christ. This is someone who understood who the source of that wealth came from, that they were just taking care of it. Just try to serve Christ with it. And in fact, she treated her royal position as a responsibility rather than a possession. And so she used her influence, her resources, even her reputation for one purpose: to love the poor the way Christ loves them. And after her husband, King Ludwig, died suddenly, she could have withdrawn into grief or tried to protect her status. But instead, she doubled down on charity. She founded hospitals, fed the hungry with her own hands, gave away so much of her wealth that she shocked, even sometimes scandalized her royal circle. And she understood something that the gospel reminds us again and again. Love of God is proven in love of neighbor. If you truly desire to love the Lord, how are you serving him in others? It's always outward looking. Not I'm coming here to receive you. I'm coming here to receive. We need to have our well filled up, yes. But seeking to be in communion with the Lord has to have this outward facing in serving of others, in seeing him in others. And how can I journey with them? You know? And especially the neighbor our world tends to overlook. So what do we take from her today? What can we learn from Elizabeth? And so Elizabeth shows that holiness isn't about our circumstances. So whether you're a royal, a parent, a worker, a student, retired, wherever you are in, of means, struggling, whatever your life looks like, Christ can meet you there. See, God doesn't ask us to escape our responsibilities, but to live them with a heart shaped by charity. That's why I love, many ways I love the church. It's like we all gather as one. If I walk to any parish at any given point, and I look throughout the nave, I can never guess who has means and who doesn't. But in the end, we're all coming together, wherever we're at that particular moment, to unite and join together and see how can we serve the Lord in the least among us. We're all challenged by that same, based on our, no matter what our circumstances are, the Lord wants to do great and wonderful things in and through you to reach others, right? And there are people that only you can singularly reach to. And so God doesn't ask us to escape our responsibilities, but to live them with the heart shaped by charity. Second, she reminds us that charity is not optional for Christians. It's not an extra activity for when we have time, right? And it's not something we push off. It's like, I sometimes, that's why I get it. There's a danger in our world today. It's like, well, yeah, I'm helping the poor. I paid my taxes. Yeah, that's not how that works. What about who's right in front of you? No matter what circumstances, the same call is to the poor, to those under oppression, right? We meet people in the corporal and spiritual works of mercy when they present themselves, and we don't offload them to someone else to do for us. Right? And so for Elizabeth, it was the center of everything. And she teaches us that generosity makes our hearts more like Christ. And that the poor are not a project, but a gift. And finally, Elizabeth teaches us the freedom that comes from trusting God more than we trust status, comfort, or control. And so the world promises security, but she found her security in the love of Christ, a love she poured out lavishly. And so as we remember her today, may we ask the Lord for her spirit of joyful generosity, the grace to see the people around us with compassion, and the courage to serve without counting the cost, and the faith to believe that small acts of love can transform the world. Saint Elizabeth of Hungary, pray for us.